Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session of MainConcept Coffee and Codecs. Coffee and Codecs is designed to be a casual, slide-free discussion around important industry topics. So today we've got a really exciting and fun topic. We're talking about bringing sporting events to fans around the world. Today I'm joined by a great team. We've got Chris Chinnock, who's Executive Director of the 8K Association, Dave Euson, who's Technical Account Manager at Dalet, and then Thomas Cramer, who's the VP of Biz Dev and Strategy here at MainConcept. And before I forget myself, I'm Geoff Gordon. I am the Vice President of Marketing at MainConcept, and I'm also your host for Coffee and Codecs. So welcome, gentlemen. And maybe let's get started with each of you telling me a little bit about yourselves and maybe your sporting passions as well before we get into the main topics at hand. So Dave, I'll start off with you.
Yeah, hey, I'm Dave, as Geoff said. I've been working at Dalet, doing a little bit of account management, pre-sales, marketing, all sorts of stuff. My main passion for sports is either the Dodgers, which I'm at Dodger Stadium right now, or esports. So we're going to be talking a little bit about esports in the future of kind of what esports broadcasting looks like.
Great. Chris?
Hi, I'm Chris Chinnock. I'm the president of Insight Media, which is an industry consultancy, and also the executive director of the 8K Association, of which MainConcept is a member. And we're very interested in promoting, expanding, evangelizing, marketing, talking about the 8K ecosystem, including sports, of course. I guess I'm probably more of an NFL guy, a long-suffering Jets fan. Oh.
I should have brought my violin with me. All right, great. So Thomas is our one representative outside of the U.S. So you guys, I think he's also very passionate about something. But
chess.
Thomas.
Yeah, chess, of course,
yeah.
right? As you can see. Well, as you could guess, big. Sports fan for football. You would call it soccer, but European Bundesliga, German Bundesliga, and all different kinds of other sports as well. Definitely very passionate. About myself, Thomas Cramer. I'm responsible, as you said, for business development and strategy at MainConcept. Been with MainConcept for many years now, and very glad that I'm allowed to work with all you guys, customers, partners on all fronts. So it's very exciting times, and I think we'll talk about some of those events and technologies here as well.
Yep, perfect, great. Like I said, I'm Vice President of Marketing here and your host, but there is a little bit of sporting passion I have as well. On the professional side, we've got, of course, the Chicago Cubs, who, although it's 5 years removed from their last World Series, nonetheless, and they did a little bit of purging of their team, nonetheless, very excited about that. And then on the college side, we've got University of Wisconsin Badgers. So there we go. It's a little bit to keep me company while I'm here working. Before we get into, again, more of those questions, maybe you can spend a minute also talking about how your companies as a whole are involved in the sporting world, or organizations, I should say, related to Chris. And so, Chris, actually, we can start off with you this time.
Okay. Well, from the 8K Association point of view, obviously, 8K has been one of those kind of premier technologies that's been the focus of major sporting events. I think the first one was the Olympics in 2012, and we've seen demonstrations of 8K for all the Olympics after that as well, and at other high-profile sporting events. So it's one of those leading indicators of kind of what's coming next in terms of broadcast technology. It was the same for 4K. It was the same when high definition came in. So we're just trying to follow what's happening, understand what needs to be done to move 8K more into more mainstream broadcast and sports in particular. And there's a bunch of things we can talk about in particular that's happening in that sports field as we continue our discussion.
Perfect. And let's see, Thomas, how does MainConcept fit into all this?
Well, maybe that's a good segue into Dave, because that's definitely one of our partners and customers here. So MainConcept is in the business for almost 30 years, 24, 7 years. So that's where we are providing codec technologies for the market for customers like Dalet, where Dave is working here. We provide codecs, video codecs, audio codecs, but also, I mean, everything that goes with it to make, I mean, a great user experience in the end, because you have to deliver a full video experience with audio, with the packaging, with the streaming. And that's where MainConcept is an expert in many years. We also have, let's say, only not only the distribution part, but also the production part. I mean, where the MUM systems, where, I mean, the archiving systems, where all the workflows and editing happens. That's also where we have specialized codecs and optimizations for those areas as well. So everything around video production, audio production, and the delivery of that content, that's where MainConcept is. I mean,
yeah, no, I'll just jump in there. So you make a really good point, because you're talking about multiple different codecs, multiple different resolutions. Back in the day, 20, 30 years ago, you had two resolutions. You had NTSC, you had PAL, and that's it. And so everything was basically just one through one pipe, and the world's definitely changed. You have multiple different codecs, you have multiple different frame sizes. You have to broadcast, you know, not only your 8K, but your 4K and your SD and your HD and your, you know, different frame rates and stuff like that. And so that's really what we're seeing. We're seeing a higher demand of not only functionality within products, but also a wide variety of different deliveries. And so you need tools that can do things like instant replays. So that's our extremely high frame rate. And you need to manage all this stuff. And Dalet, with help of MainConcept, is delivering that type of products that are in the high demand of what you see today. If you look at a broadcast from 20, 30 years ago, you know, your Babe Ruth type of, you know, broadcast to today, it's night and day of basically the tools that we're using and the delivery formats that we're pushing out. And it's almost magic compared to what it was before.
It's just so odd watching something from 20, 25 years ago broadcast. It just
right?
looks like it's from the dark ages or something. So
that's right. Yeah.
I can probably
one or two cameras, right?
I can probably add to that. There's definitely not, I mean, any better time than now to watch and enjoy your sports and your favorite teams and players. I mean, you have so many options. I mean, you have so many great experiences while doing that. And I actually forgot to, I mean, introduce him and all the others here. It's actually one of the mascot of our favorite local team here in Cologne, where I'm in Germany. So it's kind of a goat. So say hello. And of course, I'm also wearing, I mean, our shirt from Alemannia Aachen, which is the local town where our MainConcept head office is actually located. So also a football team from our local Aachen area. So that's also, yeah. But again,
Cologne and the national team as well behind you, I believe. So.
And the national team as well, yes, as well. So all about football here, but definitely have, I mean, a family with all different kinds of sports interests as well. My daughter loves equestrian. And I mean, this is also a good, I think, I mean, a segue into showing how, let's say, the technology has advanced over time, because, I mean, all these kind of, well, I wouldn't call equestrian niche sports, but, I mean, those things have not really been in TV in the past so much. Well, now you can really, I mean, have so many streams of, I mean, sports that weren't on TV in the past. You can enjoy them anywhere, everywhere, so whenever you want. So that's really an amazing time. So it's really cool.
It definitely is.
That's
great.
True.
Well, great. These are all great introductions. Before we get into our first official question, I just want to do two pieces of housekeeping. Number one is, if you have any questions, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of the viewer. So feel free to type those in. If you have a question for somebody specific, just put their name there, and we'll be sure to get to those towards the end. There's also a bunch of resources that have been added in as well. Also, you can get to those within one of the tabs below. Some different assets from our different organizations. I want to point out one. We do have a new case study with Dalet and MainConcept. So I just wanted to point out, as we're sort of touching around what all we do, but just want to mention that there are a bunch of MainConcept codecs that are within the Dalet products. I don't know if Dave or Thomas would get to it later on, but I just figured I'd read them off, at least mention Dalet Pyramid, Galaxy 5, Brio, and Emberfin have combinations of HEVC, H.264, MPEG-2, VC3, things like that. So we've been working together for gosh, over 10 years.
Yeah.
And as far as the AK Association goes, I think we joined maybe a year after it was founded or so, but I just got my renewal for the third year. So we're big into that too. So anyway, that's our little housekeeping. So let me get into the questions here, and the first one's going to go to Dave. But we'll definitely have this as an open discussion, so feel free to jump in. I'm sure this is going to be a nice and friendly discussion, but any heated debates are fully welcome here as well. So
Sure.
Dave, first one's to you.
Yeah.
Dalet works with customers from all sides of the content world. What are you seeing in the way of innovation in the delivery of sports content, and how has Dalet's product portfolio evolved to account for the changes?
Yeah, so we have a very extensive newsroom sports types of workflows. And as I mentioned before, content is crazy now compared to a decade past. And so to be able to manage all that, to be able to not only housekeeping with different codecs and well, using Amberfin, we also have to organize and be able to deliver that in a supply chain as quickly as possible. And so you mentioned Pyramid and Galaxy and Flex as well, allows you to be able to not only manage that material, but also deliver that material. So using things like API or something like either manual API, like being able to keep the score, or if somebody does a great play, we can actually take that, automatically clip it, and be able to deliver that. And using tools like transcoding tools that MainConcept uses, and Amberfin included, we're able to do that almost instantaneously. It's pretty an amazing set of features and stuff like that. And again, the demand for all sorts of different, it's always going to be more and more. It's always going to be a bigger, today's 8K is tomorrow's 16, so we're always going to be striving for better content and using things like AI in order to move forward with that.
Actually, I have a question.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
So actually, two questions. So you mentioned AI. So what do you think about the future of AI in broadcast? And the second is, what about AV1 in broadcast?
Yeah, no, AI is already kind of a part of our situation here. I mean, we're already influencing certain metadata that we that was already a part of an analog sports. I say analog because I'm going to be talking about esports later, but we already have this metadata that's either inserted in by a user, or it's going to be inserted by some sort of trigger. And you see that. You see, when somebody hits the home base, the score automatically, changes. And maybe when that happens, you can take a time code segment, a couple seconds before or a couple minutes before, and automatically clip that out and automatically give that to an editor or somebody creative, and have that instant replay available at something like an 8K content. It's not a low resolution replay anymore. And that changes the game too. I mean, replays back in the day was a photo finish. We now have, high frame rate photo finishes. That completely changes the game entirely. I follow also MMA, and it's pretty amazing, seeing how fast people can perform and the abilities to throw punches. So.
Yeah, maybe I shall take the second part of your question, or the second question about AV1. Yeah, because for me, AV1 that's a distribution codec. So it does have a great compression ratio compared to other codecs as well. It will, of course, be beaten by the next generation of new codecs. But right now, the footprint is just growing for AV1 in devices, and that's kind of the enabler for, of course, streaming services. So I do see that there's a good potential market for AV1, but there will be, let's say, the production areas which usually have, H.264, MPEG-2, but also HEVC and other MPEG-based standards. They will be dominated by those. AV1 will have a very good footprint in the actual distribution, where the leverage of, the devices, the hardware playback, and its good compression ratio will be, very successful.
So maybe if sporting events go over like Hulu or Facebook, they might transcode that to AV1 to get to more devices, perhaps?
Yeah, definitely true. Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
What I've also been seeing is more, I think we mentioned it once before, is that we're seeing smaller niche sports being broadcast as well. High school games, things like that were never possible before. The Olympics, the things that they cover in the Olympics is just absolutely incredible. And so that's with an introduction of better wireless internet or things like 5G. It's also better compression with the way that we can deliver certain things. Platforms like YouTube or Twitch, where anybody can be a broadcaster at this point, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant before with having access to so many different kinds of events that you were not able to watch in the past. So Olympics is a great idea because there were so many events happening in parallel. And if you just imagine 15, 20 years ago, you were just tied to the one signal that was broadcasted over satellite or cable. While now, you could switch out through all the internet channels and see all the different kinds of events. It's just an amazing kind of experience for the user to actually see and have access to all these different sports.
It's cool. We were traveling this summer when the Olympics were going on. We were able to basically log in wherever we were and watch our content on
there you
TVs and Airbnbs, things like that. So it's definitely customizable. Fantastic. Actually, I'll tee off the next question, at least to go to Chris, and that's sort of relevant to what we're talking about now anyway, Olympics and whatnot. But Chris, I'm sure you remember, it was September of 2020. You, Thomas, myself, and Des Carey from Samsung, we did a webinar about the future of 8K. And at that point, the Summer Olympics had been postponed, and other leagues were trying to figure out how they can balance safety and generating the revenue, whether they're going to have the leagues at all, bring audiences into the stadiums, things like that. But hate to keep on bringing on pandemic and different webinars, but what did the impact of sort of the pandemic back a year ago have on maybe the rollout of 8K, especially as it relates to sports? And then we fast forward to last summer, we actually successfully completed the Summer Olympics, and we've got hot following on that is the Winter Olympics coming up in February, I believe. So what's the impact been on N8Ks, devices, content, things like that?
Yeah, so I think, I guess some pluses and minuses. I think for the most part, product development work mostly went forward. There was a period where, offices were closed and you just couldn't get researchers in, developers in to actually move products forward. But I think that that was fairly short-lived. So I think roadmaps for product development pretty much went forward during the pandemic time. However, rollouts and demos were definitely impacted. So you couldn't do, demonstrations of sporting events in 8K. Obviously, the Olympics was delayed a full year. So I think the bottom line is we probably saw a good year kind of delay in kind of the development of the 8K ecosystem. When we've talked about these kinds of resolution transitions before, and there's a pretty significant history of these transitions. They happen about every 7 or 8 years. So from the introduction of a new resolution to 50% of sales of TVs I'm talking about now is about 7 years. So, we're at the beginning of the sale of the 8K TV. So in 6-7 years, we should be at 50% of sales for 8K TVs. That's been the history of full HD. That's been the history of 4K. So did the pandemic impact that? Yeah, a little bit.
Well, it also means that more people were watching TV too, right? People were buying the 4K TV for their new content. So yeah, that 7 years is really interesting because I'm so spoiled now. It's hard to watch something that's in HD over 4K. So it's interesting, especially over the last 2 years, kind of the benefit of the pandemic is that more people were watching and buying new TVs. So.
Oh yeah, the 2020 was a huge, and into 21 was a huge sales year. Are you kidding me? It was
Yeah.
record breaking.
Right.
Yeah, we all, I mean, especially in the beginning, we all became really accustomed to doing that. And like you had said earlier, it's being able to watch that. There were some high school sports going on, but nobody in the audiences, and so they had to figure out pretty quickly how they could stream that to our phones at a minimum, but TVs would be fantastic. So
yeah, and I mean the whole the pandemic just accelerated roadmaps in terms of remote production in sports and broadcasting phenomenally. I mean, I've heard many people say, this was on our roadmap to do in 3 to 5 years, and we did it in 3 to 5 months.
That's right. Yeah. I saw a lot of production, well, especially things like MMA or like, you saw it was interesting to watch a baseball game and actually hear the ball hit and echo throughout the whole stadium. And eventually we got audience back, but we adapted as audience members to that that model. There were other organizations, especially in esports, where you can do that from a home. You can compete anywhere you want. And so within a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, they adapted from a stadium type model to being able to participate in home, which is just incredible, the way that they kind of move that forward. And there's plus and minuses to that, but the show goes on, and that was pretty incredible how we adapted. And what we need, we found out that sports is actually a need for our competition is something that the human nature needs in order for us to kind of move forward, and seeing that. And so we adapted, and we're almost back to normal, but it's amazing how quickly we moved.
Yeah. And maybe one of the next bigger challenges I see in the whole broadcast area is that their big value proposition continues to be live, and particularly live sports, right? Versus over the top and streaming providers. But that dynamic is changing rapidly. We're seeing broadcasters moving to create streaming options, not necessarily traditional broadcast options right now. So this is going to be fascinating to watch over the next 5 to 10 years. I think the landscape will be completely different in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
This is sort of what on Saturday mornings we're trying to figure out where I'm going to be able to stream my games. So which app do I need to load on my TV to watch that? So I am sort of cable free, sort of, but So can I watch my Badgers, or is it going to be preempted by a USC game because I'm on the West Coast? Things like that.
Well, sir, I mean, back in the 70s, right, when the cable TV was coming in, it was all about bundling stations, and the major cable providers were able to bundle and drive subscriptions, right? And then we went to the cord cutter kind of a regime and the over-the-top regime, and now we're seeing almost the return of the bundle, right? It's now it's a combination of the streamers or more advanced thinking broadcasters that are combining all these delivery options into bundles and packages again. So it's from a business point of view, it's fascinating.
We got to make sure every year to go through and review our overspending on our, at least with the cable, it's easier to, it's one bill, but it's like you got to add up all the different ones.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're all progressing pretty well along here, but Thomas, you already touched on this a little bit. We talked about AV1, things like that, but anything else you want to comment on as far as notable trends, as far as broadcasting in sporting events? And we're really touching on this, but give you the opportunity here.
Yeah, sure. Actually, that's a good question, because one trend that is also accelerated by the pandemic, and we didn't talk about that, is move to cloud. All the production is actually now finally also moving into cloud facilities, into cloud environments. So that definitely was also something that the pandemic was accelerating. And we see that with, almost all our customers, MainConcept customers, who want to have our technologies optimized for cloud leverage. There's, of course, just the pure codec itself, compression, I mean, it doesn't really matter if you do that on your local computer or somewhere in the cloud. But in the end, everything around the actual codec, I mean, the data, the content must go into the cloud, must be coming down from the cloud, must be streamed to all the areas and edges. That's where, of course, I mean, the details of the technology and optimizations for cloud environments must be done. And that's been, I mean, a huge driver over the last 1.5 years for many of our customers. So that is a huge trend for the production. While if we're talking about the other side, the distribution and broadcasting of content, I mean, they've, at least if we're talking about internet streaming, they've, I mean, leveraged cloud and CDNs, I mean, since many years already. So the actual new thing about the cloud is the production side of it, right? I mean, the editing, the online editing, team working on production. That's where cloud is leveraged. The streaming itself, I mean, that's, I mean, of course, a great trend for the new codecs that we're seeing. So we talked about AV1, there's HEVC, which is actually the first one who allows for 4K and all these new areas where we see that. So internet streaming is definitely moving much faster than I mean on the actual production area. Well, the other things, and we see that on the actual broadcast TVs, who are usually a little slower. But I mean, there's emerging standards, right? And I mean, there's ATC 3.0, there's DVB new format, there's RIPE and ISDB. So those formats that are complete, I mean, that's a complete set of standards who are making the full kind of TV broadcasting. They have so many flavors now with the details of an on-site, a facility, office, and server room, and cloud kind of encompassing all of those, I mean, areas. That's an amazing kind of trend where, I mean, so many details have to be figured out because we know no workflow is equal, I mean, same as another one. So every workflow looks different. So looking at all these huge standards that TV broadcasters are using, there's so many details in every piece of that production step where, I mean, optimization work is almost everywhere needed. So this is a huge trend. Customization for every custom workflow. I mean, that's really where we see MainConcept being leveraged with, let's say, standard codecs or formats, but customized for every workflow.
Yeah, no, when I talk to a new customer, it's always, we need to do this, and it's rarely ever the same. And so you're right. It's being able to meet those demands and being able to be flexible enough to work with a wide variety of tools, a wide variety of up conversion, down conversion, being able to create multiple different resolutions at different destinations. All these things are things that you enter the meeting and you try and figure out if it's possible or not. And being able to have a tool like what Dalet offers is that we offer a very open API. And so we're able to meet those demands of the customers, sit down with them, and actually, everybody wants to use the same tool a little bit differently. And so meeting those demands from anything from a workflow that's live to maybe a sports package or a promo package before and after are all things that we have to do kind of on a case-by-case basis, but use these standards every single time. So
Exactly, yeah.
And what we're seeing at Dalet is kind of a hybrid model of cloud. So sometimes that means that you're delivering things from a local to like an S3 bucket or one of pick your flavor, and being able to transcode in the cloud for maybe lower resolution types of jobs, maybe your H.264s or something like that for proxy, but then having a bare metal system for something much higher, like your high res, your J2Ks, your uncompressed. That stuff still needs to be bare metal because the egress cartridges alone will put you out of business. So we're not quite there ready for uncompressed video in the cloud, but so we're going to be there for a little while where we have kind of this on-prem cloud type model. There's no going back. We're never going to go back to pure bare metal type of facilities anymore. But we're not going to go. It's going to be slow moving, I think, from here, moving forward with higher resolution, especially with egress charges and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really interesting time to be in this business, in the man business, in the delivery business. It's kind of like I tell people, it's kind of like the Windows 95 era of production right now, where we got a good handle on an operating system. We know, the concepts, but it's just going to be optimized from here.
Wow.
So Thomas, what about JPEG XS as a mezzanine codec in production and potentially moving up to the cloud, as Dave suggests?
Yeah, well, I've actually seen quite a good, interest in the market over the last, I would say half a year, or a little bit more than half a year, in especially those formats. JPEG XS, but also others. There's a Tico. There's other formats that can be actually used for, transferring data, almost, let's say, raw or uncompressed data. Of course, it will be compressed, but it's the raw data. Even almost raw sensor data from cameras into the cloud for those kind of online workflows. So those are actually quite interesting and will over time, I think, be what Dave just said, take the step away from having to still use bare metal servers and just instead just bring it into the cloud immediately. So I definitely see that there's we're a little bit behind on that area, like Dave said, so we still have to rely on those. But it's getting there, so we definitely see those JPEG XS and those formats are being used there and will be used there.
Yeah. The new Nikon mirrorless camera, their Z9, actually has that Tico RAW codec.
Yep.
Oh wow!
So that will enable them to capture 8K 60 frame content in a mirrorless.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
And that's another interesting trend that's happening in sports here is the Megalodon, so-called Megalodon camera, right? You've seen in NFL and starting to see I think in baseball as well. It's a full frame mirrorless type camera on a gimbal, a handheld gimbal that they've run around, and it creates this cinematic look that's completely different than a broadcast look, and consumers are noticing it and they like it.
Yep.
Actually, I have a question too. Now that another one is, since you're mentioning more of the professional type equipment, is I have my phone here. It's a Samsung, and it actually can shoot in 8K.
Yeah.
I don't.
That's crazy.
I do it occasionally. It's a nice little gimmick, but I don't know how that's affecting things. I guess I have nowhere to distribute it once I do those. But it's great for if I'm taking a video at a game or whatever it might be. I can just then snip those, and I can create my high-res pictures directly from that.
Well, exactly.
I don't know what else. Yeah.
And you can put that up on YouTube. It can play, through other family members, and it will be in 8K. It's 30 frames or 24 frames, but it's still, higher quality.
Right. It's just it's something they don't enable, which I guess makes sense because it'll eat up somebody's memory faster than they know what's going on. But yeah, it's a nice neat thing to know that that's part of at least the more premium phones are coming with that. I think even more of the midstream phones too. So yeah. It's 8K is just in our pockets these days.
Well, and think about it. We're talking about a TikTok generation, right? They're all going to have those premium phones. Pretty soon, that's going to be standard just to capture in 8K and upload it to the cloud directly.
Yeah, you're already seeing tools like that. I just picked up I buy phones maybe once every 5 years or something like that, and I bought the new Pixel 6. Really cool camera. It actually has Photoshop type features of like people removal in still images, but people removal people removal. It's basically just a shift in
magic eraser, I think they call it.
Magic eraser, and it's instantaneous. And so you're gonna see things like that. Yeah, like TikTok. When I first saw Instagram filters, the way that it just kind of pops up right away, it was pretty magical. Even in the industry that I'm working in, I'm like, wow, that's really, really quick, and everybody has this tool. And so you're going to see a whole generation of people kind of getting into that Twitch, TikTok, generation. I grew up in the high 8. My my parents had a Hi8 camera, and so I ran around with the Hi8 camera, 30 minutes of battery life, but I was able to like make little movies with my friends. Now you have an 8K camera right in front of you as a device that your parents will basically pay for anyway. You're going to see this whole new generation of not only broadcasters but content makers. And the price of delivery is nothing now. Some of the YouTube videos that I watch are just as good as any broadcasting. And so we need to handle, all that type of information as well. You're seeing it at a hardware and a software level both. So it's pretty impressive. And the viewers, you can't really lie about the viewership either. You're seeing these people, millions of viewers or hundreds of thousands of viewers watching all sorts of different content, not only sports, esports, but also just real life. People walking down the street attract thousands and thousands of viewers. So
I know. I know that the things that my grandchildren look at on TikTok, I can't understand it at all, but they're completely into it.
Yeah. Well, and
so many side discussions we can get into here too.
Bringing it back to
TikTok,
sports,
esports, gaming, gambling.
Well, bringing it back to sports, it means that again, your Little League game could be streamed live, to whoever wants to watch it. If there's an audience, they'll come. And so, it's pretty amazing. Bringing it back again. What in 10 years we have no idea what sports is going to look like, or traditional sports. So.
Yeah. I think we combine 8K and then we talk about when you're at Little League games, it's also 5G. We don't even talk about that, but that's all what's enabling this to happen too.
That's
what
Actually,
6G is going to do for us.
We have the great family tradition here in my family still, where we actually meet all together in person still. In person, coming together Saturday afternoon and watch together. Our Bundesliga football games here. That's, I don't know, I just wonder as you said that, if we still do that in 10 years, I don't know. If maybe we just sit kind of virtually together. There's new features, right, on the platforms that we're using, where you can actually, add to the live broadcast. You can add your kind of free friends from, let's say, to build your virtual conference to watch actually the game virtually together. So that's pretty cool features as well. So those kind of things are amazing, and probably also driven by the pandemic itself. To have such features in those players.
Go for it. I'm sorry.
The Samsung 8K TV, for example, has you can actually put up 4 different quadrants with 4 different signals. So you could have an internet feed, you could have a webcam feed, you could be watching, have your all of the family members there watching the broadcast with you. So this is all doable today.
I went to my first VR concert the other day, and there were other people around me watching. Now it was basically a 2D screen, but we were all in a 3D environment where we could walk around. But I talked to the person to my right. They live in Minnesota. Her husband actually came into the thing as well, and we all took selfies together and stuff like that. Enjoyed the concert together in an environment where you could walk around and put your hands up, and your avatar moves your hands as well. And so you're going to see this community events. Now it's nothing like being in an actual concert yet, but you're going to see a lot of that as well, where you could be in a stadium watching a game next to somebody. You get that popcorn throwing experience in more than just in sitting in your on your couch. So it's pretty amazing.
I was going to mention VR earlier, but that's great you brought that up. I think there's definitely applications. I know even a couple of years ago Intel was doing. I think they have something with NBA where you can watch that within VR, some of the NBA games. So again, it's not you're not getting quite that same resolution, but it's a pretty neat experience when you can turn your head and you're looking at the audience over there with you.
Well, and I want to bring in esports here, because this is kind of a really cool concept of being in a stadium, where you don't have a physical analog. You're not constrained by the analog world. You have a camera that can not only replay at any time, but be in any angle at any time. And so watching something like an esports match where you can be anywhere you want is kind of mind-blowing. And we're just kind of in the beginning of kind of the ideas of that. I think we're still pretty early, but I think that's kind of the next step. If we're starting to look and see how we can do that in kind of an analog baseball game type of thing, where you have multiple different cameras with multiple different angles, but not being restrained to that brings an unlimited possibility. You don't have a seat. You could be anywhere. You could be literally looking at your favorite player's face at any time and have freedom of movement, and look around and see everything around you. I think that's kind of the future in 10, 20 years for sure.
Well, I think Canon's already set up something similar to that. You basically ring a stadium with cameras, and actually create intermediate virtual camera positions all around that stadium. So you can do a kind of a bullet, a matrix kind of bullet time capability, and you're seeing that broadcast today too, because they can set up those camera arrays and do that. It's not real time yet. It takes a lot of processing to do that, but getting to real time is just a matter of time. We know processing power will advance and make that possible, right?
Yeah. I have a question for you guys. Do you think that the invention or the what we're seeing today, that photo finish, is it helping sports, or do you think that it's is it new opportunities to maybe cheat a little bit? Because I think it has an opportunity to do both. Like maybe you're seeing something that you're not supposed to see on the field, or maybe referees have better calls. How do you guys feel about that?
I think
it's helping.
I think it's helping actually. It definitely is. And in the end, if you see too much, if you are able to see something that bothers, or it just takes away the kind of feeling about it, it won't be broadcasters in the future anymore. There will be things that remove it or make it not visible anymore. But over time, the whole thing that gives that crystal clear options that you have really gives a great experience. So I do see that it really brings us forward, and it's just making everything to the experience and making it better there. So I definitely see that.
It certainly makes it fairer, because you can see things that you might not have seen if with the naked eye with a referee. But on the other hand, we can also start to see things that are so minute and so close that it becomes a judgment call, even with technology, and it slows down the game with all these reviews.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there's pluses and minuses here.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. It's that whole timing thing. I've seen some of these reviews are going to take like 5 minutes. I know they have limits on them, but if you're getting such minute detail there, then how come it's going to take so long to do that? You're mixing that authenticity.
I saw a stat the other day about the length of baseball games. They've increased to 4 hours on average now, from 3 hours.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So I think, and they've done it. I think with different sports, they're implementing it in different ways, but they're usually only for very specific plays that they would do those kind of replays or judgments. So, but I know they're expanding the realm of what that's going to entail over time. So, hey, I think we're actually running. This has been fantastic. We're running sort of up to our time, but I wanted to sort of vary up a little bit how we're going to end this. It's just because we've skipped over a bunch of stuff because we're talking about it within here. But I just want to give you each an opportunity, sort of jump in. We've talked about the future, but just sort of say where you think they might go. Maybe I'll start with Dave. And even before that, I just wanted to make sure I point out, because I know Dalet recently won the Stream Media People's Choice Award for Europe. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's always a great thing to see. But I think maybe we'll start with you. Is anything you want to talk about the future? I know we've talked about maybe where the gaps might currently sit, but anything you want to talk about quickly for that?
Yeah, no, well, thank you. Yeah, we have a great team. And what we're seeing is what I think is going to be the future. Not only, better codecs, better deliveries, more obscure sports being, pointed out, esports being one of them. But I think that they're also going to be able to see things that you're going to see nerd and sports kind of come together more than they are already. API first, automation, longer baseball games maybe that we're seeing, because there's so much things that we can analyze and overlook. You're going to see analyzing type of content being, your sports desks also being longer as well, and being able to organize all that footage. Again, Dalet does all that stuff. We clean up your footage, we organize it, we deliver it to wherever it needs to go. And so I'm really excited to be a part of a team that sees that API first, that automation, that AI. Moving forward, all of our products are cloud-based, API-based workflows. So,
all right, thanks, Chris.
Yeah,
actually, specifically even about we've got the Olympics coming up again. Anything you can think about? The Olympics can be broadcast in 8K. Where do you see things moving?
Yeah, I don't know specifically if they will, because it's kind of hard to get information out of China specifically related to the Olympics. But I'm seeing certainly a lot of smoke around that, if you will. I suspect there will be some 8K broadcast. How much it will be public and how many hours, I don't know. But now, the Chinese are clearly going to want to do at least as well as the Japanese, if not better, right? In the Winter Olympics in terms of 8K. So yeah, I think this kind of trend will continue, and we've already talked about a lot of the things that will happen in the future of sports. AI, ML, more cameras, more resolution, higher frame rates, virtual cameras, actually being able to create not only avatars, but a whole polygon rendering of fields and players for virtual environments, not just for AR and VR, but eventually for holographic and light field displays in your home. These things are all on people's roadmaps. So, having that in-stadium experience on your wall-sized TV is not a fantasy in 10, certainly in 20 years. I think that will be reality.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Those sci-fi movies are coming to be reality.
Yeah.
Thomas, how about you? Maybe direct you to the codec side of the world. I know we talked about AV1, but even beyond that, BBC, anything on the codec side you want to?
Yeah, sure. Of course, looking in the future, since we're MainConcept, there will be the next generation of codecs. For sure, it's something that we've been working on. Our customers expect will, open up the market for that, to have, more pixels, deeper pixels, and all these, things that improve the user experience. But actually, I want to use that look in the future by looking back, because as Chris also already said as well, is there's kind of a predictable kind of life cycle, not only for TVs, but also for codecs. And we've just, seen that, for example, the production codecs, have a huge, a really long life cycle. And looking into the future, I see us actually working in past codecs like MPEG-2, H.264, and also HEVC. It's all about, efficiency, right? You have to improve codecs. Even though they are, from a compression point of view, already matured. There's new platforms, there's new CPUs, there's, ARM technologies like M1 or on Linux ARM or Cloud ARM. That's all on existing codecs that are old, really old, something like an MPEG-2. It's amazing how long these codecs are still in life. And that's where MainConcept is really strong on maintaining and even still optimizing for latest platforms, those kind of codecs. So I see actually our future, working on past codecs as well a lot. And the other thing, there's this innovation for new codecs, there's the compatibility and there's the efficiency on existing codecs, but there's also the compatibility where I see MainConcept's future as well, because that's where, we make those production workflows reliable. Otherwise, you can't really have a 24/7 production if you can't rely on the format compatibility on the actual tools. So this is all where I see the future as well. Of course, there's so many cool new things, but keeping it to those kind of basic things, it's just so bright for the future and so important for the future as well.
Good point.
Yeah. Okay. Before we sign off, I want to take a step back from the technology of sport broadcasting and just talk about sports in general. So I'm going to ask each one of you maybe where your passions lie, but maybe we'll start with Thomas again. Let's talk about, there we go, yeah. So let's go local first as far as FC Cologne. How's the season going to progress for them? And then we can talk longer term. I think we've got a World Cup coming up. How's the German national team going to do?
Well, I mean,
what are your predictions?
I think the expectation, everybody in FC Cologne would be happy if we stay in first league. I think that's the goal. So, I mean, different to US sports, we usually have, leagues where you can go up and down, right? So it's actually, I think it will be excess if we stay in the first league. That's great. And it currently looks like to be like that. So I'm predicting, yes, we will remain and stay in the first league. The FIFA World Cup in, when is it? 2022, end of 2022 in Qatar. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't really see a great success for our team because we're just building the team. So don't see us there in 2022, but the next years, the 4 years after, or the European Cup in between after. So that's kind of my hope.
I have to say, I've known, I follow football or soccer here. For some reason, the kids all play that when they're growing up and sort of forget about it when they get to their later years. But relegation is something I really only recently learned about, and it's because of Ted Lasso.
Yeah,
that was that's what I learned. Great show, but that's the main thing I learned is you can actually go up and down. So to actually have something else, you can be in the bottom, but you're still rooting at least to win at least one more to stay in the league.
That's a
great.
tough,
so good luck with that.
Game, yeah.
Yep. Dave, let's see, sympathies on baseball. It's crazy you're there at Dodger Stadium now, but your team at least made it significantly further than the Cubs did. The Cubs essentially sold off in July.
Yeah.
So
and
I don't know
usual Dodger fashion, they choke at the last moment, So
you had last year and many others as well. So
Yep.
Esports is something that I don't know much about, and just in a couple seconds, what does that look like? Who are you rooting for? What does that look like? How does that all happen?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So maybe we do another whole topic on this. Esports is something that is just growing like crazy. You're getting anywhere from like 30% growth each year on certain sports events and stuff like that. But really, sports is all about bringing people together. And I've got a large group of friends that not only play the game Overwatch, which is a big game that Blizzard makes, but we also watch and sometimes play with the athletes that in the same game space. And so it brings us together. Me and my wife bonded over Overwatch and all that kind of stuff. And so I think you're just going to see, especially the generation below me, is more open to the idea of watching high performance people playing video games. And it's going to get more and more competitive. The prize pools are just going to get bigger and bigger. And I think that we can't ignore this growing demographic of viewerships any longer. And so I guess if any prediction I have is that next year is going to be a big year for esports across the board. And it's going to get more and more it's demanding itself to be taken more seriously. There's a group called FaZe Clan that just that's kind of like a group that plays multiple different video games, and they have their own athletes and all that stuff, but they just valued themselves at $1 billion. And so as an organization, I don't think they'll get that, but it's not out of the question that these organizations are going to be just as big as traditional sports.
I think that's probably one thing I do know about esports is that there's a lot of money there. And that's
there is a lot of money there.
I didn't know about $1 billion, but hey, before I pass it to Chris, just one thing I meant to mention this earlier is you got a drink there too.
I do totally as a
model.
Yes, monster,
exactly.
So
yes.
It's early for me in the West Coast. You as well. So
yeah. Just I noticed the monster, so I just wanted to sort of fitting the stereotype right there for you.
That's right. That's okay.
So Chris, I think we'll talk about Super Bowl with you. You mentioned the Jets earlier. Maybe we don't want to go there, but
I'm not going there. No. So I mean, there's a lot of teams in American football, of course, and in the NFC, there's actually 4 pretty good teams at the top of their divisions: the Cowboys, Cardinals, Packers, and the Buccaneers. But I think I'm going to have to go with the Cardinals on the NFC side for this year.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll go with them.
Okay.
On the
Got
AFC,
got that recorded.
on the AFC side, it's a lot more muddied, I think. There's no real standout team here, other than the Titans, perhaps. But I think I'm going to take a wild card and go with the Bills this year.
Oh, that would be so we've got the Bills and the Cardinals. All right.
Yep.
We're going to check back with you in February on that one.
Okay.
See how that played out. That would be quite an interesting Super Bowl.
It would be.
I think one thing, great. Okay. I'm not going to make any predictions myself, but I know we're talking so much about professional sports and there's, college sports mean so much, especially in the States also. So I got my Badgers, but I've never really, no top 4 for football. I don't think we're going anywhere in basketball, but nonetheless, it's fun to watch and a lot better than they were when I actually attended the school. Anyway, so thanks, guys. I know Sarah's in the background, our producer, and she's basically encouraging us to commit to something else. This has been really fun. I think we've got a lot of topics we can still continue to cover. Esports in itself could be a whole discussion. We haven't talked about sports, betting within sports. Dave, I don't know if you know, our parent company Endeavor also owns the UFC. So,
okay. Well, there you go.
We're tangentially related to the UFC over here too. So
yeah,
I know that we got some MMA and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so much stuff. So this has been great. Thank you all. We'll see when we can do something else.
That sounds great.
Thanks for
having us.
Also, remember we've got those downloads too. All right.
Thanks for having us.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Go Cubs.
Bye.
Bye. Beer time.
Yeah.